Cool. So welcome back to another episode of the Stripology podcast. Today I am interviewing Amanda, and I'm really excited and very grateful to have you here. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. So good to be here.
No problem. So Amanda and I met in person at the end of last year, but we had 6 months together in a container called SwiftMind. So we have the same mentor. And I started following Amanda. I was introduced to her work, on Instagram. And I absolutely just, resonated so deeply with the message around, the nervous system and identifying, different fear responses. And as I do everything, I looked at this content that you're putting out there, Amanda, with a filter of, how does this apply to the stripping world? And it's just so important. It's so important to understand what we're going through, night to night. And, we're living in a world in the stripping industry that's, not only hard on our bodies because it's a nocturnal world, but also what we're faced with every night. We're faced with a lot of drunk customers. We're faced with a lot of challenges. We're faced with a lot of things that can represent to us on a really deep level, things that are sort of a bit disruptive, to our nervous system, whether it be offensive or, our boundaries being encroached or pushed or, being confronted with, whatever people feel like they can say to us at the time or do to us. And there's just so many opportunities for us to just either subtly or really strongly get triggered into a fight-flight response. And it's so important to identify that, and not only that, to really train ourselves and to become more and more aware and in tune with ourselves as to what that looks like to us individually. And if we do notice that we're being triggered in certain ways, what to do with that, how to empower ourselves to get back to feeling, more, back to feeling in a state where we feel regulated and where we can, move through the night in a way that feels good for us and keep our energy, channeled towards productivity and all of those things. So Amanda, as I said, thank you so much for being here. And can you please start with just telling us a little bit about your story, and then we can get into the whole, responses and everything that we can do there.
Absolutely. So I hit my first burnout when I was 28, and that's kind of what started me into, meditation, mindfulness. I did like a certification in meditation and mindfulness to become a teacher. It started me on the journey of like health and wellness, mental health, well-being. And then I ended up moving to the UK, and I had this whole plan for my life of what it was going to look like and what I was going to be doing. And 2020 happened. And COVID happened. And in the UK, we went into like major lockdown, and suddenly all the travel and the parties and the fun that I was using to distract myself from some of the deeper work wasn't available to me anymore. And a lot of things started coming up, and I was going through a lot at the time because with the pandemic starting, I lost my job, I lost my visa and my right to live and work in the UK. I was suddenly unemployed. I couldn't get back into Australia because they'd shut the borders, and I couldn't access any finances. So there was so much triggered in me. My nervous system was completely dysregulated. I was socially isolated as well. So I didn't have any contact with people. I was living on my own at the time. So I went into a really deep spiral and a really kind of dark depression because of everything that was happening. And when I hit rock bottom, the darkest point was, I was dealing with suicidal ideation, and, it was really hard to move out of that, even with the therapy that I was doing. And it was then that I kind of discovered nervous system regulation and somatic experiencing techniques, which is really about bringing it back to the body. So a lot of the therapy that I've been doing was talking about our mind and talking about our feelings. But the thing with trauma is that it lives within our body. And so until we reconnect with our body, until we reconnect with where the anxiety or the triggers are sitting within our actual physical self, we can't really move it out. And so mindset work is really important, and the talk therapy is really important, but incorporating the somatic experiencing with that has been absolutely revolutionary. And in the last 3 years from that point to where I am now, after starting the regulation therapy with my own therapist, the way my life has shifted is just beyond incredible. I came back to Australia in 2020 in November. I was 20 grand in debt. I was deeply, deeply depressed. I was socially isolated. And now, like only a few years later, I'm in a career that I love. I love coaching. I love doing this work. I'm surrounded by incredible people. I'm in the most kind of regulated space in terms of, you know, there's a lot of stuff happening around me, but my ability to hold space for it and hold those big emotions and stay present with it is like, it blows my mind. So that's why I'm so passionate about teaching this to other people, because it's such a skill, and we don't really learn how to stay present with emotions. We learn how to dissociate and ignore and push it away and just stay positive, but that doesn't help us. So that's why I love teaching it, and that's what's kind of brought me into this space.
Amazing. That's so great that you're here in this space. And, you know, that sounds like such a journey to get there. So I'm so happy that you've done the complete 180 and now you're able to help others, you know, when needed. So that's amazing. I want to talk about, firstly, identifying the subtle things that happen to us when we become a bit dysregulated, or when we notice ourselves, you know, dipping into fight flight response, because sometimes, you know, it can be really subtle and it can then escalate before we even are aware of what's happening. And so, as I mentioned, you know, at the beginning, there's so much opportunity for us to get triggered in the line of work in the stripping industry. So much opportunity for that. And oftentimes it just starts with little subtle cues, and then it can really escalate. And when that happens, it's the sort of the further down that track you go, the harder it is to come back. So I'd love to talk with you about just some subtle signs that we can identify that can really help us to start, you know, practicing these things that you teach, and sort of nipping it in the bud and just going, hang on, this might be happening right now. What can I do? So firstly, how do we identify it?
Yeah, well, your nervous system is constantly scanning without you even realizing your environment to see whether you're in threat or whether there's something that's dangerous around you. And it could be small reactions that you feel in your body. So really tuning in to what's happening inside is such an important tool that you can have. So it could just be a very subtle feeling of discomfort, an energy that's moving through that just makes you want to kind of move away. You can feel your body move back from somebody, or you can feel maybe like tingles in your hands that is telling you that you're feeling slightly triggered by something. It could be a feeling of constriction in your chest, or suddenly you find yourself not able to really get the words out properly, or you know, you're struggling to find what to say or how to say something. That can be a real sign of dissociation. Starting to get defensive,
Sorry, it's cutting out a little bit. I heard, yeah, starting to get defensive, and then, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you could find yourself starting to get defensive or snappy. That could be a sign that you're moving into a fight response. So the way your speech is, the way your breathing is, if you're starting to breathe more quickly or shallow, or you can feel your breathing is really like from your chest up and it's not really flowing into your body, that could be a sign that you're actually feeling a little bit threatened and your body's getting ready to either fight and defend or get the heck out of town. So those are just little things that you can start looking for in your system to tell you that you're moving into fight flight. There's other behaviors that tell you that you've kind of moved out of the fight flight, and what ends up happening is when you are triggered by something, somebody says something that feels really triggering, or it feels unpleasant, or you just don't know how to react to something, and you kind of start overthinking. So you completely leave your body, you're in your mind, and you're trying to figure out something to say. But what's happened already is just that moment of being triggered has released adrenaline into your system, and then cortisol. And it shuts down your thinking part of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. And you go straight into your reptilian side of the brain, which is the part that is your survival mechanism, which is great, but it doesn't help you rationalize and then keep control of the situation, because you're completely in this response of, I either need to defend myself or I need to get out of here. Right. So once that's flooded, and if you've been in that for a long time and you haven't come back into a state of regulation, what ends up happening is you move into a dissociative state. So this is the point where you might find yourself like mindlessly scrolling on your phone. You don't want to talk to other people. You need a space to yourself, just to like shut down, really. And you can find that sometimes your posture is a little bit more introverted, because you're trying to protect yourself. So you're kind of concaving, you're falling inwards. Other things you can find is, you're reaching for a glass of wine, or you're using sex, or you're using drugs, or you're using shopping, or you're using food, or any number of things. Even exercise, like over exercising, can be a sign that you're trying to numb yourself from being in the present moment by doing an activity more than what is probably considered healthy. So those type of behaviors can be a sign that you've moved from fight flight into a dissociative freeze state, and that you need to bring yourself back into a state of regulation. Because the power of being regulated is that's where we can make changes, where we can take control of a situation, where we can rationalize, and mostly where we can connect. So obviously when you're on the floor and you're, talking to customers, you want to be in that pleasant, really open, genuine energy, because that makes the other person feel safe. That helps you connect, that helps build a rapport. But if you're in fight flight, it's much, much harder to do that, because there's still that energy moving through you that will be subtly picked up by the other person, because our nervous systems are always talking to each other.
Yes, thank you for putting it like that, just so beautifully. That is something that I try my best to describe, because I feel that so much, and I've experienced it so much, in my life. I've definitely had chronic anxiety for a very long time. And so in my personal journey, really working on coming back to myself from a really chronic dissociated state, that's when I started seeing huge leaps and bounds in my career in the stripping industry, because I was able to connect. And if you've ever worked with me or read my work online, or, done any of my workshops and masterclasses, you know how much I talk about the power of connecting with people, and how, it's a two-way street. That's what both people really want. And so when we can hold space for that, and, really connect with others with that open heart, and that, just from that state, it's really a way that we can powerfully create amazing customers, and not only feel safe, but also have our customers feeling safe in our presence. And it just makes for such a more beautiful, experience. And we also bring a different side of our customers out when we're relating like that, because there isn't this reactivity, or there isn't this, defensiveness. It's just a more open, honest, beautiful interaction. So I love that. And I'd love to speak to you now more about, okay, maybe I identify these responses, these sensations going on in my body. What can we do to help strengthen our ability to become more regulated, more often, and catch ourselves before it gets too far, or, whatever, and bring ourselves back to a more regulated state? What does that look like, and how do we practice that?
Absolutely. So one really great thing you could do is, let's say you're having a chat to a customer and something happens and you feel triggered. And it could be a really innocuous thing, like they haven't said anything that feels triggering, or not necessarily outwardly, but somehow you're starting to feel defensive. You can feel yourself either getting really aggravated or a bit snappy, or you're feeling like you want to get out of there, but you're still trying to have this conversation. One technique you can use to bring yourself back into regulation is this orienting technique, which is a really grounding way that you can do this while you're in conversation, because it's so like natural and easy. It's called it's the technique of 5. Basically, you scan the environment. So what you're doing is you're engaging your peripheral vision and orienting, which helps you find safety in your present state. So you'll look around and you'll find 5 things that you can see. So move your gaze slowly around the room and just name to yourself what you're seeing. So, whatever's there, just slowly name 5 things you can see. And then name 5 things you can feel. It could be like the clothes on your body. It could be like the floor beneath you, the shoes that you're wearing, the hair on your neck, your earrings, whatever you can feel. Just go, okay, well, I can feel this. I can feel that. I can feel that. So it's 4 things you can feel. And then 3 things you can hear. And then 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And if you don't have time to do all of that, even just orientating yourself with 5 things you can see can be a deeply regulating movement, because that orientating process tells your nervous system there's actually no physical threat here. There's no tiger waiting to pounce. There's no, guy with a machete. Like, I'm safe in this environment. It's fine. Yeah. If you've moved past that initial phase where you're just feeling that slight energetic shift that's telling you you're moving into a bit of an anxiety spiral, that's when you can go and take some time out for yourself. And if you can go into your change room, if you can go into the bathroom, wherever you can go to get some like space, depending on what kind of energy you're feeling. So let's say you're feeling defensive, a little bit aggressive, you're in that attack mode. That means you're in fight, right? Yeah. So what you want to do is you want to like shake that out of your body. So what you could do is you can go into a space where you're on your own and literally just stand there and shake your body. Just start with slow movements and then allow your body to just move really naturally and allow it to flow and shake that energy out. You can start running on the spot. It's really a way to move that energy and the cortisol and the adrenaline that's flowing through you out. So it's finishing off the cycle. And once you've done that and you can feel that energy is kind of left to you, your breathing is better, what you do is you bend over from your stomach. So you kind of bend over in half and you allow your body to just full up. So it's that kind of, that gentle movement where you're bent in half and you're allowing your arms to swing, and you just do a big sigh out. Ensure that your breath out is longer than your breath in. So that helps you just move back into regulation. And that end point where you kind of lean over and, just allow yourself to flop and release and do the breathe out. It tells your nervous system that, okay, I'm safe. I'm relaxed. I've moved that energy out. The cycle's over. Beautiful. So that's one technique. If you're in flight, so you'll feel a little bit different in flight. In flight, your body is probably moving away from the person. You'll feel kind of like your energy is moving backwards. You are fidgeting, you're looking for an escape without even maybe realizing it. There might be fear responses in you, like it could be in your stomach, it could be in your legs, like you want to run. So you need to help yourself move that energy out. You're feeling scared, right? So if you're in that state where you're really feeling triggered in the flight, again, if you find your own space, a really great technique is just bringing safety back in. So you can start first by the running on the spot, because that helps you feel like you're fleeing the situation. So I know it feels really funny to be doing that, but it actually works in your body. So you'll do the fleeing kind of energy, move, run. It makes you think like you're escaping whatever was there that was threatening you. And then you just bring safety in. So this is a really easy technique. You put your right hand under your left arm and your left hand on your right shoulder, and you just kind of give yourself a hug. And it's like a slow, gentle rocking movement that you do. And you can just kind of like bring your arms down, just like slowly, just it's happening. It's an exercise where you're bringing gentle touch to your body. You can just like gently rub your chest. And it's a soothing motion. It just feels really lovely to bring that soothing energy back to yourself. So that just helps soothe you when you've been literally, you're kind of in a fear response, right? So it's a really nice way to bring touch, because touch is such a important part of our nurturing response, like to regulate our nervous system. So even that. If you're completely in that dissociative state where you're scrolling on your phone, you don't feel like engaging with people, which obviously isn't great when you're at work, kind of a key part of working. What you can do if you're starting to get into that dissociative state is, again, this is because you're in freeze, you have to bring kind of gentle movement back in, because it's really hard when you're starting to feel that compression and depressive state. It's like a gentle rocking motion I would recommend is one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. And in this state, you're trying to bring more air in. So you're breathing in for 5 and then you release for 3, because you're trying to bring energy back in. So you do like, and just gently start rocking. Once you've brought your attention to your breath, you can just bring gentle rocking in, and then just sway, just allow yourself to move. And then it starts just really, really slowly to bring that just soothing, gentle energy back. And then you can stand up, and then you can start like rocking back and forth on the balls of your feet. And then you can just bring more and more energy into your body whilst holding that position, so that you feel that safety coming back in. So those are like 3 different exercises you can use depending on what state you find yourself in throughout an evening.
Thank you. I love that, because that's really important to identify, even hearing, okay, these are the signs of potential freeze or potential, fight or flight. Because, for example, I tend to go into fight, and I've heard about, animals after they've, just been chased down or whatever, or, and then something happens and they shake it off. I see my dog do it sometimes, and he shakes it off and then they kind of move on. And I've heard that, but I haven't heard the next part. And when you described, the bending over and the actual swaying, I could really sort of, I'm gonna try that myself, really feel that message to your nervous system, and it's over now, like that completion, like now I can do some slow movement. And then with the freeze, like just bringing slow movement back, because if you are feeling frozen, you're feeling that pressure and just that stuck feeling that can come up so much. It's like so many times in my coaching I've had described to me it as, I'm feeling really anxious and now I've got concrete feet. I feel like I'm stuck to the floor. And sometimes, it comes up so often in my coaching. And sometimes when, we're in that freeze state, and basically to be productive, it's like, cool, now I have to approach the next person, but I can't move my feet, and I can't get from here to there, even though it's just a few steps across the room. It almost feels impossible. And so thank you so much. That is such valuable advice. I know it's going to reach so many people that can relate to these experiences, and just bringing the awareness, like, to identify that's what it is. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. These are completely natural states that we all enter into and out of in everyday life, or maybe we have it chronically. And the importance of looking at that and going, cool, how can these small practices that we can bring into day-to-day life change our lives actually on like the macro spectrum? like you've experienced and like I've experienced. And it's an ongoing practice, it's not sort of like, but I've done it 4 or 5 times and it didn't work. It's like, I mean, I know in my experience, after probably a lifetime of being in, intense fear response and anxiety and fight, and probably all of them dissociation, and oscillating through like most of them all the time. My days now, I really prioritize things that I know bring that feeling of safety to me, because I know that my career in stripping was really fueled by a lot of my fear responses, and the end goal was to feel safe, even though by potentially doing it in a lot of unsafe ways, a lot of the time the end goal was actually moving towards safety. Like, making money helps me to feel safe, creating surroundings around me helps me to feel safe. And now allowing my nervous system more and more day by day, and it is a conscious practice, and I need to do it most days. Like my gardening, you'll probably see on my story a lot, just cuddling my puppy and gardening, and just those slower things that I know help allow my body to know, like, I am safe, I've arrived here, I am safe. And it's like a constant reminder.
Yeah,
Just
that's so powerful. What you've just said, like gardening, cuddling your puppy, those are things that really actually help with regulation as well. Gardening is such an earthy, present moment practice. And it's such a great tool to bring yourself back into regulation. Cooking is similarly, like if you enjoy cooking, that's a really great way to get, because you're so present when you're doing it, right? You're in the moment, you're sometimes your mind can go wandering, but usually it just helps you bring yourself back because it's so sensuous. It's so like feeling. Pets, I mean, my cats, while I was in the UK, were the most grounding presence that I had, because I was literally like in isolation alone. I couldn't touch another person. Even if we were allowed to catch up, we had to keep like a 1.5 meter distance. We weren't allowed to touch or hug or anything like that. And as human beings, we're social creatures. It's deeply traumatizing not to be able to touch another person. So yeah, just like cuddling a pet can be super regulating, and it's a great way for people who've experienced quite extreme traumas to help them, rebuild relationships and rebuild bonds as well, is through like having pets and that sort of stuff. So yeah, really powerful little things that you can do every day is that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then just that reminder that it is a practice.
Yeah.
It is about consistency. It is about, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like training yourself to catch yourself, and that self-care of giving yourself that nurture that you need. So, rather than the push, like the spanking the dog, whacking the donkey all the time.
Yeah.
Which is how I, tend to do things if I don't keep myself in check. I really get ruthless with myself. And I used to have a mantra when I worked all the time in the strip club, and that was, well, I'm not dead, so I might as well get back out there and make some money. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Really brutal with myself. Yeah. So I've come a long way in that sense of, self-care and really identifying when I am in fear response, and giving myself those things that I need, because that's my form of chronic kind of, like you were saying, ways of numbing out, is just being super brutal with myself and just becoming a human
a perfectionist. Yeah. The workaholic.
Yeah, totally. Yes. So so I just want to quickly look back, and just to come full circle, I really want to talk about the energy. So the energy that it takes. So you mentioned, the actual hormones that are released in our body when we're in fear response, like the cortisol and sort of, the adrenaline and all of the energy that takes. And then not only that, but the energy it sort of takes coming back to equilibrium. And yeah, if you can just take us through that a little bit, and then the importance of, how we can sort of become more efficient with that, I guess, rather than using a lot of energy, because a lot of us at the end of a shift can feel really exhausted, and sometimes it's on the quiet nights where we haven't been really active, but we've been battling things internally, and a lot of assigning stories to things, and sort of feeling dysregulated in different ways. So just how we can really look at focusing on our energy.
Yeah. So I mean, what ends up happening is if you've been in a chronic state of anxiety for too long, you end up getting into the cycle because you kind of get addicted to the adrenaline as well. So that's why some people think, oh, I work well under pressure. But in actual fact, physiologically, you're not able to work well under pressure because it shuts down your prefrontal cortex. But you thrive on that energy. That initial hit of adrenaline is really addictive. And so sometimes we end up, almost self-sabotaging ourselves to put ourselves into situations where we have to, work harder or really rush. I always use the airport example. One of my friends is so addicted to being in a state of fight flight. She will leave at the most last possible minute to get to the airport, and we'll have to rush through the system. I always leave a little bit earlier because I don't want to feel that anxiety. But she does it all the time, and she's so addicted to that rush of energy. But what it ends up doing is, in the long term, because you kind of create situations sometimes where you are able to get that kick of adrenaline, and you're not doing it consciously. This is all happening at a subconscious level, right? Your nervous system is 80% of the communication that's happening in the body. So that's 80% is happening subconsciously. Your brain has only 20% to do with what you're seeing and what you're actually engaging with. 80% is literally happening at the subconscious nervous system level. So what ends up happening is, because you've been in this adrenaline stress cycle for a really long time, you get more inflammation. You have more chances of, heart disease, of diabetes, of the actual impact of an excess of that hormone in your bloodstream impacts your hormones. It impacts your sex drive. It impacts your brain physiologically. It impacts your ability to create new memories. I believe one of the reasons we see much more memory loss now is that we are constantly on. We don't switch off. We don't rest. We don't prioritize the recharging and the rewiring of our nervous system. We hustle all the time. Hustle in the term of constantly working, or constantly packing our day with stuff. And because we don't prioritize that rest and that ability to re-regulate, we end up paying for it in the long term through our own health and our well-being and our ability to get engaged with other people. So it's so much harder if you've been in that chronic state of dysregulation to bring yourself back into regulation from there. You can do it, but it takes a lot of work. For me, when I first started doing this, I was in a chronic state of dysregulation like you, really high anxiety, I was like a high performer, but that literally just meant that I was always on, and it wasn't a good thing. Never prioritized rest. Instead of resting, I'd be out partying. I'd be, doing stuff that made me feel good but in the long term, I would, come out of the weekend feeling like shit. But then I'd be hustling in my next job, going to the next thing, doing the next thing, and constantly doing. And so basically what happens is it takes so much longer to move that stress out of your body. So if you can put this into your practice every day, which is what I do now, I do 30 minutes a day. When I initially started regulation, I had to do an hour a day, right? That's how long it would take me. And my body was like a rock, honestly. My therapist, because she does body work as well, would touch my muscles, and my muscles just wouldn't give. It was like touching stone. I was literally in stone. And so just that gentle, if you can just bring gentle somatic exercises in before you go to work. So even before you have to leave, if you can give yourself 15, 20, 30 minutes to bring yourself into regulation, bring yourself into your body, check in with how you're feeling, do the work before you get there. And then once you're there, you've set yourself up for success, right? You've done everything to come in with an energy that is regulated, you're much more in that ventral state, which means you connect well with other people. And so even if you're triggered, because you've done the work beforehand, it's so much easier to bring yourself back into that regulated state. But if you go in feeling harried and like you've been hurrying and rushing from one thing to another, you're coming in and then you're coming in with that energy and you're expecting to engage with a customer or a potential customer. And like their nervous system is picking up the energy of what you've been in. So it's not going to be conducive. You're going to work triply hard to bring that, back down. And then why I say do it afterwards as well is because if you've had a long night and you're exhausted at the end of it, you want to bring your nervous system back into a state of regulation before you continue on with whatever's the next thing that you need to do in your day. Go and do the exercises again, bring yourself back into regulation, whether that's, through gentle touch, through a really lovely shower, through a self massage, whatever you need to do to bring yourself back into your body, into a feeling of safety before you go to bed, before whatever you have to do next. That sets you up again to start off on the right foot at the end of it, because you've moved that energy of what you've been doing for the whole night, like whatever hustle you've been in, out. And so now you're feeling much more calm. You can sleep better, which obviously you wake up feeling more rested. Because if you go to bed feeling like that anxiety is still running through you, you're not going to get a proper night's sleep. It's going to a proper day's sleep. It's going to be doubly hard, right? So set yourself up for success by doing the work ahead of time, prioritizing it. I know as women, we're told not to prioritize self-care. We're rewarded for being self-sacrificing and putting others' needs before our own, of like not respecting our own boundaries. But at the end of the day, we're the ones who suffer, right? So yeah, that's why I think if you can just put the time aside, it's an effort, yes, but in the long term, you're going to feel so much better.
100%. Yeah, that's something that I also, share a lot with my clients, my coaching clients, and in the academy is there is actually so much work we can do outside of work to help us when we're at work, rather than, and I use the analogy like, rather than just waiting for game time, top sports players, they do so much training and practice in the lead up to the game. Like, they're never going to perform as well if they just wait till the game and go, cool, let's do it.
Great example. Yes.
Yeah. So it's all of that training that we can do for ourselves. We are our own boss, and we can do all of these things outside of work to just help our own lives be easier and more efficient. And I just want to ask one last question before we get into your offer, which I'm so excited about. Do you feel, this just came up for me when you were explaining about that addiction to adrenaline, because I definitely have that. And also the lateness thing. Oh my gosh, so many examples came to mind. Like when I was a kid, I used to even take off a piece of jewelry, shut my eyes and spin around and throw it, just so I had no idea where it went. So I'd get a huge amount of adrenaline trying to find it. Crazy. Yeah, so that's just popped into my mind. I haven't thought of that in like, I was going to say 8 years and 30 years. Yeah, crazy. And just all things like that was just seeking adrenaline. My husband's even worse than me with adrenaline. But do you find that someone that's had a chronic addiction to adrenaline, do these practices seem boring?
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
Oh my God, yes. I was so addicted to adrenaline. One of the first exercises my thematic experiencing therapist gave me was this, right? I had to stare at a spot and then really slowly move my gaze, and literally this is how slowly I had to go. And it felt so freaking triggering to do any movement this slowly.
Yeah.
I can't just do like this. And she was like, no, slow it down. I'm like, I can't go that slow. And it would just feel like, it felt like ants crawling all over my body. That's how like triggering slowing down felt.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the more you slow down yourself, the faster the world around you starts going. So in terms of like attracting the right opportunities and all of that starts moving a lot quicker when you're not in that like zooming energy.
Totally.
Incredible. Like honestly, me slowing down, if I can do it, I think anybody can do it.
Yeah. Same.
Me slowing down and being able to just bring that real easefulness into everything that I'm doing.
The superpower.
Wow. Like, wow.
Yeah, I have this piece of writing from a little while ago called Intuitive Stripping, and it's about using your peripherals. And it is about bringing all the senses in and all the micro information that you can bring in. And you can almost move through the night with this flow and this ease. And it's so incredible, but I've experienced it so many times, and other people that I've worked with, you know, have been like, wow. And when you talk about the peripheral, I remember just, you know, experiencing that for myself, not knowing what I was doing, but realizing when I'm bringing all of the information in and naturally feeling slower and more regulated, I'm making more calculated decisions. I'm bringing, you know, more pieces of information in so I can make, just better decisions with more slow calculated rather than this frantic, who next, and, you know, this, So it ties in together. It is so important in our industry. And I can't thank you enough for sharing this information.
Absolutely.
We have a free 5-day challenge coming up on exactly this, sharing the most amazing information. Can you please tell us about it and when it is?
Yeah. So I've got a challenge coming up on the 22nd of May. It's starting on the 22nd of May. It's called the Rest Revolution. And it is for women who are so used to just going, never prioritizing their rest. Over the course of 5 days, you'll learn how to recharge, reset, and rewire your nervous system. Small techniques that you can use and incorporate it into your daily practice that will really just help you drop back into regulation and really prioritize that rest. Because when we come out from that space of being recharged, gosh, our energy is just so magnetic, right? Like when we're at pleasure in our own body, feeling really rested, we attract people, things, opportunities that are just, you know, so aligned. And so really just learning how to do that, and just really tiny techniques that you'll learn that you can easily incorporate into your routine so that you feel that empowerment to be able to take control and reprioritize rest for yourself.
Amazing. That sounds so good. So that's 22nd of May, free 5-day challenge. Is it going to be recorded as well, just in case?
So I'll be sending the techniques via email. There'll be little video snippets in there. So when I do an exercise, you can see how it's done. So you can easily incorporate that in as well. There'll be like meditation, EFT tapping. So it's a mixture of different techniques that you can use. And obviously, like if one technique feels better for you, you can use that more often. But it's almost giving you a smorgasbord of like different things you can try out to see what feels really good for your nervous system, for where your nervous system is at as well. So
amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to put a link in the show notes. So if you're listening to this and you're interested, it sounds incredible, then just check the show notes and you will be able to find it there. And so I'm talking to Amanda. Her handle on Instagram is @the Amanda Louisa, and she has some really great information that I know is going to support anyone that's listening, anyone in the stripping industry and any branches of the industry. I know that nervous system regulation is just such an essential part. Thank you again so much for being here. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I've loved this conversation.
It's been brilliant. Cool. Thank you. And I'll catch everyone next week on the next episode.